Hi, everyone. Bonnie Violet here. I am a queer chaplain. And you, in case you don't know where you are at Dragon Spirituality, a multi-faith conversation. This evening, we will have a handful of guests that I'll introduce to you here in a moment. But for folks who've maybe never been to a drag and spirituality event before, basically this is kind of where a drag show, if you will, meets a spiritual conversation. And so in tradition of drag shows, we do, the drag artists will accept tips along the way. So we'll be sharing their Venmos and their PayPals and that sort of thing. So feel free to, send a tip as the show progresses. And then we'll also, include socials where you can connect with them on social media. Also, if you're challenged with reading it from the screen or you're listening to us, you can find the links in the description. So folks are either watching us tonight on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, or you're listening to us after we've filmed this live on a podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts at either a Queer Chaplain or Urban Village Church's podcast. Also, we want to engage with you this evening. So if you do have any questions for the artists or comments, please do interact with us. Tell us that we're pretty, tell us that we're funny, all that fun stuff. It just kind of helps get the energy going for all of us. So please do interact with us this evening if you feel so inclined. And I think that was all I'm gonna say to get us started. So what I'd like to do is go ahead. We are, one of our artists is not quite here yet, but we're gonna go ahead and bring the other two artists right now, and we'll go ahead and start the conversation. Hi there.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
I'm good. I'm alive.
We almost are like color coded where like I'm purples, we got oranges and blues.
Yes.
All kind of match each other. We complement each other, I think.
Yes. Right. And that just happened naturally. Look at that.
Oh, just natural. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and take a moment. And if you guys want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, and tell us a little bit about your drag. So Mango, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Mango Lassi. My pronouns are she, her in drag. I am a registered veterinary technician by day. And when I'm not doing that, I'm doing this. So I got my start on Instagram 5 years ago. And it kind of just blew up from there. There hadn't been a lot of Desi drag queens on the scene, especially ones who kept their facial hair. And I think that's kind of what got me attention online. And now my platform has become my Instagram has become a platform for me to talk about issues that queer South Asian people face, racism, art, fashion, all the things that make me me.
Awesome. Well, hello world. My name is Coco Sho-Nell. I put the ooh in Sho-Nell. And I go by she, her when I'm falling in the geesh, if you will. I am located in Chicago, Illinois. So born and raised here. So they're very local. I kind of actually got started doing drag almost technically 20 years ago. But I didn't start doing Coco till like over 12 years ago in the bars and things because I'm a theater queen. So I would do plays and musicals and drag, but then I started being Coco and was like, oh, let's do it. Let's go for it. And since quarantine, I've learned a lot about technology. So I learned how to do a lot of virtual shows, and I'm fortunate to be the co-host of Boylesque, which is me and Biddy Man. And we have several gentlemen and gentlemen presenting performers that do different shows with us. So we have different guests from all across the globe. We have people from like the UK. We have people from Toronto as well. Yeah, people just like doing different like acts, different burlesque and drag acts together because it's like they're cousins. Burlesque and drag are cousins. So yeah, and I just love to be able to share positivity. That's a big thing for me. Is just sharing positivity and love when in person or through the interwebs. So yeah. Oh, I can't hear you.
I can't hear you either.
That's because I put myself on mute. I gotta do a little bit of that. What's that?
I said rewind, like Hamlet said rewind.
I know, right? Well, I was saying I didn't introduce myself. I'm out of San Francisco. My name is Bonnie Violet, and I'm a transgender queer spiritual drag artist and digital chaplain. So thank you so much for introducing yourselves. Usually when I get into conversations about talking about drag and spirituality, many times I'm talking to folks one-on-one, but this is a group conversation. And what I'd love to hear is a little bit of like, maybe you could share of what your understanding or what you were taught about spirituality as a child or as a young person.
Yeah, I was raised Muslim. My parents are Pakistani Muslims, and I grew up in a pretty religious household. I was religious myself for a very long time, and a lot of my spiritual practices were just based off of Islam. So whatever the religion taught me, I did. And I distanced myself for a while from Islam because it was all fear-based teaching. And as a young child, that terrifies you. As a young queer child, you're just like, oh my God, this is scary, and I'm going to go to hell if I have these thoughts and if I continue down this path. So the most logical thing for me to do was to cut that tie. And that's what I did for a long time. And it wasn't until I started drag that I reconnected, which is so weird because it's the gayest thing you could do. Right. And it brought me closer to my religion, the religion that I was raised in. And I think the most important thing I've learned over the last 5 years of doing drag is that like those things can coexist. You know, it doesn't we queer people are so I don't know, magical. Like there's so many intersecting identities combined in this body, and like it's just I should be able to express all of them without fear or and without judgment. And that judgment is, of course, also me judging myself for like even calling myself a Muslim or calling myself spiritually Muslim or you know, Islamic at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I reconnected, and now I pick and choose what works for me, and I think that's the best way to navigate a strict religious upbringing that you're trying to reconnect with. Like pick the pieces that really resonated with you and move forward with that somehow. And I feel like I've been successful at that. So yeah, that's where I'm at now with it.
Yeah, I can totally attest to that as well. So my dad is Catholic. My mom is Baptist, Southern Baptist. And I am an Nichiren Daishonin Buddhist. So I went through a spiritual journey as well because I just didn't feel connected to Catholicism at all. Just growing up, I kept like asking questions, and I was like, I just didn't understand like why were we excluding certain people, or why were we not embrace everyone? I didn't understand, because if you're talking about God's love, then that's everyone, because everyone's God's children. Like it was that mindset of I didn't understand why are we excluding other people. So I went through like a major journey. I practiced a lot of different religions before I found Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, and I've been a Buddhist since 2004. So I'm a numbers kid. So it was 654, June 5th, 2004. So and for me, it just fit because I can make a connection to the universe and connection to others and share peace and love and have conversations with people of like, well, why do you feel that way? And is that how you feel, or was that how you were raised? Because that's a true testament of for certain people. It's like, well, that's just how I was raised. That's how I was raised. I was like, well, is that how you truly feel then? And then get into that conversation of like breaking some of those stereotypes of like, oh, well, gay is wrong, or gay is this, or I don't understand trans, so it's bad. Like, maybe just have a conversation with someone that is different than you, then you can maybe learn something. And then you're like, oh, wow, I never thought of things that way. And then it just kind of expands, because with my practice is always about dialogue, and dialogue helps and heals. And when you do that, you understand where someone else is coming from. And then when you do that, oh, the countless things that can happen positively from that conversation. So,
do you ever get pushback from people? Like, if you were to talk with a religious person, like if I were to talk to an imam about my queerness or the things I do in drag, I would almost expect pushback, and like I'd be afraid to have that conversation.
Sometimes there is pushback. Sometimes if they're really like holding on to their core principles, which isn't a bad thing, it's more of, well, that's fine, but there could be more.
Yeah.
And just explaining to people that there could be more. And actually listening to what they're saying, because I think a lot of times when you get pushed back is because you feel like, oh, they're trying to push this on me. Mm-hmm. No, that's not what we're doing. I just want you to have an open mind that there are others that are different than you, and you can accept others. It's okay. It's okay to accept others.
Yeah. One thing I always found strange is that a lot of these religions have that they're supposed to be all-encompassing and very accepting, but it's almost the people that forget that.
Yes.
And they create a community of hate almost. It's scary.
It is. It's very scary, and I think what's important for us as queer folk and believing in what's good for us is to understand that they need to listen to us as much as we need to listen to them, because that's the only way that change is going to occur, is if we listen to each other and understand where everyone's coming from, and then we can come to a common ground. Now, I'm not saying we're going to change the world overnight. That's not going to happen. But what I'm saying is we can make steps towards acceptance. And sometimes people are just so deeply rooted into their beliefs and faiths. It's like, okay, that's fine. But then think about the conversations and let those seeds of acknowledgement and acceptance take root. And let them, sometimes they just need to step out and think about it for a moment. Like, it may not happen in the conversation there, but it can happen later. Like a week, 2 weeks later, they sit down and think about it. I was like, oh, wow, they were really trying to educate me in a different way that I never experienced before. So.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of queer folks have had, those negative reactions. And so like a lot of us have actually been traumatized or harmed spiritually by like organized religion. And so I think sometimes bringing it up, it triggers something. And then regardless if it's drag or not, I know when I first started doing drag and spirituality, I was passing out flyers in the Castro. I'd be like, hey, you want to come to a drag? They're like, yay. And spirituality. And they're like, no, we're good. Yeah. So what was your first impression of drag, either of you, when you first saw drag, and when was it?
The first drag queen I saw was Jackie B. This is around 2007, I think, when she made a parody of Baby Got Back called Baby Got Front. And
yes,
it was so funny. And I that was my first time seeing a drag queen, knowing it's a drag queen.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen trans and third gender people in Pakistan before, on visits with my family, but I back then I just thought they're trying to I equated that with a drag queen, but I didn't realize what an actual drag queen was later. Mm-hmm. Jackie B 2007, and I loved it. And I didn't see another drag queen until I turned 19 and started going to bars in Toronto.
Nice.
Word. So it was the 90s when I saw my first drag queen on TV. So my parents used to go to sleep early. So we had cable, and I had cable in my room. So
Lucky.
there was an HBO documentary about Charlie Brown's cabaret show that was in Atlanta. And so I saw this documentary that I was just fascinated. I was like, who are these people? Like, they were doing like these flips, and there was this one queen named Raymond that would do this fire number that was banned in the South because of how like elaborate the fire display was. And like, you know, I found out later like licensing things like that. That's big deal. So that was the first time I saw like on TV. It was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I never thought I would become one. I just thought it was, oh, these are amazing people. I just want to go see it. And then when I was 19, I had a fake, and I went to see Taj Mahal, who was a Chicago legend drag performer here in Chicago, was a drag performer. They passed on, but they were amazing. They were so welcoming and so loving. And I was like, all right, I want to hang out with more drag queens. This is my people. These are the people that are, you know, leading the community. So, and I didn't start drag until officially like the early 2000s, but it was like spotty. But then, yeah, the end of 2000s is when I decided to become Coco, and I was like, I used that inspiration from seeing these amazing performers like trans and gay men too, just performing on TV, and like my experience seeing Taj Mahal, who was a trans performer, and use that to inspire me to perform now. So yeah,
awesome. And it sounded like neither one of you really were conflicted as far as like doing drag and your spirituality. Is that correct?
Yeah, I when I started drag, it was the time in my life where I like completely disconnected from religion and spirituality. So it wasn't even a thought to me until I started doing like strictly South Asian stuff, or like, or I started doing it more frequently. And then I was like, the culture and the religion are just inseparable. Like there's so much overlap and everything's so intertwined. And like, once you start doing or like tapping into that, like the South Asian stuff that I was doing, I just started getting flooded with thoughts of like religion and spirituality. And yeah, I think that's what started making me go back and having more positive thoughts about Islam versus what I was thinking before.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't always connect it at first, because one of my routines is like I listen to music. I also do like 30 minutes of daimoku, which is basically chanting. So that's to get me open to perform well and be receiving of like all the gifts that the universe can provide for me. But I really started connecting more as I got later in life, because I realized that so many people need love. And a lot of times people like escape to the bars and escape to, you know, certain things because they're searching for, you know, love in their heart, and just love and acceptance. So I started to be more of like making sure I go there early before a gig and talk to people and get to know people. If I feel like someone needs that connection, that love, I make sure that I point them out through my number and I talk to them later on. Because for me, it's always been, I want to make sure that everyone's having a good time together. And sometimes people just need that connection, you know?
Yeah. For me, I had already kind of like grappled with my religion and came to spirituality. I'd gotten sober. And so before I'd even started drag about 3 years ago. Now I had started when I was young. I tried it once, but I really had a hard time with, I'm trans. So I think I had some internalized transphobia. And once I started doing drag, it really like awakened this thing with my gender. Have you, how has drag impacted your relationship with your gender or your sexuality, if at all?
I tell this story every time someone asks, because it was like a pivotal moment in my life where I turned off the switch of femininity. I was probably like grade 6 or 7. and I grew up in a house of all girls. We lived with our cousins, and everyone. I only had girls to play with, which I didn't care. I loved it. Never had to buy a Barbie, just use theirs. So we were playing house one day, and I dressed up in my mom's clothes. And when my parents got home from work, one of my cousins or one of my sisters had told them that Hamza's dressed up as a girl today in mom's clothes. And my dad pulled me aside. He was in the garage, and he was like, "If I ever hear or see it myself, I will send you to Pakistan." And it wasn't a joke. He was dead serious. And for a queer kid who grew up in Canada to be sent to Pakistan to live out who knows how long, it would have been horrifying for me. And I don't know if I would have survived it. That was when I turned that switch off. And I didn't turn it back on till my early 20s. Like, it was off for a good 10 years. I was hyper masculine all throughout high school. It was a time when we took a trip to Pakistan for a month. I barely spoke because my voice was so feminine, and I was terrified that somebody would find out that I was gay. And I was just scared. And that's where and drag helped me reconnect with that again. So like I'm able to be more feminine, even outside of drag, and be comfortable outside of drag and feel safe. I think that was the big thing for me, feeling unsafe, being any hint of feminine in those 10 years where I had to turn that switch off for my own safety.
Nice. And so drag's been an outlet to be able to
for sure, 100%. Yeah.
Right. You have a lot of makeup, right?
Yeah. And I like that it leaked into my boy life, you know? Like I'm able to like dress more feminine and like be okay with it and not care that people are staring, you know? Like I can wear a crop top outside and feel good.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm 31 now, and it took a long time, but I'm glad I'm able to do that now.
Yes.
That's beautiful. So I had very similar because growing up in primarily Black and Latin neighborhood. If you're a boy, you got to be, show the machismo, make sure that you're gonna date girls and you want to be the man and provide for everyone. I was like, I just want to dance and be pretty, And my parents were like, we got a different one here, and but they never restricted me. It was always like in school, when I had to go to school, being around other kids. That's when I had the issue of like, you can't be feminine. You can't jump rope with the girls. You're supposed to go play basketball with the boys. Like things like that. Because I was like, well, I'm a good turner. I'm like, I'm a good turner. I could do double dutch. I got it both ways. What you need? So when I went to actually to high school, that's when things kind of like shifted, and that's when it was like, oh, am I different than everyone else? Because I don't want to do certain things that the boys are doing. I want to do what the girls are doing, and I want to, do sparkly things and be part of musical theater and dance and singing. And I was like, oh, so it was a big change for me of like mentally of, oh, that's something that I'm different than other people.
Yeah.
I'm different than what community is expecting of me. So for a long time, I just kind of like hid into the shadows and just like, I'm gonna do what's expected, especially in high school. I just do what's expected, date a girl or two, and then once I go to college, then I can be my true self, because then I don't have to worry about the stigma of like being near where everyone know where I live, and people can like tease me and taunt me. And this is, back in the 90s. So, and this is something I talk about all the time too with people. People don't realize how different it was in the 90s. Like being gay in the 90s, it was like, oh, it's a death sentence, because that associated gay with AIDS.
Yeah.
It was just automatic. And it was like, if you come out as gay, and there's like, oh my God, you're gonna get AIDS and die. And I'm like, and then it's coming from like, my dad wanting me to pick my own religion and find what's best for me. and looking at Catholicism and looking at like, the Baptist practices, and it just didn't fit for me. So I was kind of lost. I'll be honest, I was kind of lost. That's why I just went through a major journey. And I'm so grateful that my parents never forced me to say, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was more of like, just find out what's best for you. We'll give you the tools, just find out what's best for you.
That's amazing. Kudos to them. That's
so I'm so grateful for that, because where I grew up and on the south side of Chicago, a lot of people were not like that. And if you were gay, then you could get beat up. They would throw rocks through your window. They would do all kinds of things to you. And I was very fortunate to have such a supportive upbringing to just explore what I can be as a person.
Mm-hmm.
In that time where you were like trying not to do feminine things, did you ever shame yourself when you caught yourself doing those things?
Yes.
I remember doing.
Catch myself. It was one of those moments, because I will say, knock on wood, I was a good actor, so I could pass for certain things. But yes, when it was certain things, it was like, oh, I love disco music. So I was like starting to sing like in some songs and stuff, and I was like, oh, you put too much neck into that. You're doing using your hands too much. Calm that down. And it was like the little mind and the little voice back in my head, like, you're being too much now, right? You're drawing too much attention to yourself, right? And it's like, so I was just like, my thing was always shutting down. So when I was being too much, I would shut down. I would be quiet and just like, and that started my me eating too, because I was really thin, like in grade school, and then high school I plumped up. And I think that was because of the realization of like holding everything down and not wanting to embrace who I truly was as a person. So it was a way to cope with everything.
Yeah. I don't think Sorry.
Sorry, I said I remember praying when I would like do something feminine, and I catch myself and be like, oh my god, oh shit, like I gotta go like pray that this will be forgiven. And it was such a terrible feeling. Oh yeah. I kept asking myself, I was like, why me? Why am I the one, like out of my entire family, why am I the gay one? There's so much shame associated with that. And I can still feel it sometimes. When if I love crop tops. If I'm wearing a crop top outside, crop tops and mesh, they're like my thing. So like if I'm wearing that outside and I get like a look from somebody, especially a brown person, my mind immediately enter that state of shame that I was in like 15 years ago. And it's such a weird feeling because I'm comfortable with myself, but it's just like my brain has trained me to take that as a warning sign or like to feel shame. So it's still something I deal with today.
Yeah. I had a little bit different experience. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. So my dad was always correcting my expression, and he was always trying to make me more manly. I didn't read it at the time as feminine. I didn't read it as the time as that I might be gay. Like I'd never seen anyone who was gay. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I had no kind of context for it. And the only time gay people were referred to was, derogatory terms and violent things that have happened to them, And so I think for me, for whatever reason, I was, I just didn't notice. I didn't notice that's what it was until I got much older, until I was like a teenager, almost even like, I don't even think I really understood it until I like left high school.
Wow. Yeah.
So how was it? Because I know like for folks, there's like the coming out around sexuality or whatever. But coming out as a drag artist is like a whole nother experience too. How has that been for you? Or do you want to share how that was for you?
To family?
Family or whatever kind of comes to mind.
So I'm not out to my parents, which a lot of people find surprising because my drag persona is so huge and very public. But I'm a firm believer that if it's not safe for you to come out, or if there's no reason for you to come out, you don't need to do it. Your safety should be your number one priority, and I always prioritize my safety. And I have a great relationship with my parents without them knowing this, and and it's very public. If they could find out if they wanted to, or if somebody told them, and that day will happen eventually, and we'll deal with it when it comes. But I'm very happy with where I am now. Yeah. So but everyone else that I've come out to as a drag queen, like they love it. I started with my ex 5 years ago, so like we became like this drag couple, and then it turned. Now we're not together anymore, but I'm still continuing on, and my current partner loves it. My friends are really supportive. My sisters and my cousins who know are super supportive as well, and they like the advocacy work that comes with it, and they think it's really important.
Oh,
so yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, my family knows about it. Like, I was actually more nervous coming out as a drag queen than I was being gay. Real talk. And the reason was because my parents had like a lot of different friends across the board. Like, we had a friend, Creighton, who was a hairstylist here in Chicago. He was a backup person for the Oprah Winfrey Show. Mm-hmm. So a lot of characters were around when I was growing up. So that was a good exposure for me as a kid of like seeing different people, different walks of life. So coming out as gay wasn't as hard as me coming out as a drag queen, because I had to explain to my parents, like, well, I am a drag performer. This is what I do. It's a part of who I am. And I had to explain the difference between like, well, I'm still going to be my boy self. This is just a way for me to express myself, creatively and a way to connect to people, a way that I couldn't do as my boy self. And I just had to like break that down for them. And they were like, oh, okay, we get it now. Like, it took them a while. Yeah. It took them a while. But when I perform at the Baton Lounge, which is like a legendary place here in Chicago, they all came to it and I cried, because that was the first time they actually saw me in drag, and I was like really excited. And it was I love telling this story because it was my two worlds were combining. My parents, my mom's sisters, my little cousins, my big cousins were all there at the Baton, along with people that I have idolized, like Andre DeShields from Broadway, as well as LoUis CYfer. They were doing a play here, so they were all in the same audience at me making my premiere at the Baton. So I was crying and going crazy backstage, and people were like, what's wrong with it?
That's so magical. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
It's such a magical moment. And my favorite director of all time, Jerry Mitchell, who directed Kinky Boots, who does Broadway Bears. He was in the audience too, so I got to take pictures with him and I got to talk with him. So I still, like, to this day, like, I get chills. It was one of those magical moments of like, here I am, world. There it is.
That's so beautiful.
It was a really great moment to me. I'm so fortunate, because not everyone has that opportunity of like, sometimes, you come out as gay, like, okay, when you come out as a drag queen, they're like, what, no, like, because there's still a stigma and a still idea of like this whole perverse idea of like, oh, drag queens are, man hungry and perverts and this, and I had to like break that stigma of like, we're not that, we're just entertainers, You don't say that about J-Lo.
Yeah.
And she wearing the same makeup and hair and wigs and outfits as we are.
Right?
I think another, if I were to come out, or like when drag queens do come out and they're from a South Asian background, there's no language for drag queen in Pakistan. So like the next closest thing to equate it with is a trans person. So if I were to come out, my parents would probably think that I'm transitioning, which is also like really frowned upon in Pakistan. So like that's just it adds like a whole nother layer with whatever culture you're raised in or religious background, and like it just plays such a big part in how people will perceive it.
Yeah. Zovia has a question in the comments. They say, what does your spirituality practice look like? Can you talk about your experiences sharing or practicing your spirituality with your partner? It's kind of two questions in one, but
yeah. I kind of don't do anything with my partner spiritually, but we meditate together sometimes. He does pray sometimes as well. And I usually just pray at night, or it's always in moments of weakness, I guess, or sorrow, or loneliness. I hate to associate spirituality with like negative feelings, but I think it's important to acknowledge when we're looking for answers that we don't has for us, we look to God or whatever you believe in, you know. And I just like to acknowledge those negative feelings because they're important. They play a huge part in a queer person's life, I think. So yeah, that's when I'm most connected, and most of it is just like clearing my mind and praying and being calm and, you know, asking myself questions.
Yeah, because I agree. Like for me, like chanting is it's a way to center myself. It's a way to open my heart up. So sometimes I'm introverted. I know you can't tell right now, but but sometimes I can be very much like, I'm just gonna close these four walls around me and I'm just gonna stay here. So it's a way to make sure that I'm opening myself up to experiences and people. And also a way just to refocus myself. Sometimes, you know, things happen in life that will rattle you, and it could be people, it could be situations, and it's a way that keep me on focus on what I want to achieve in my life. And I think it's so important to just find whatever works for you. I think a lot of times we as people of the LGBTQ community, we do look at religion, organized religion, as a negative thing because of the history. But I think a lot of people are turning the tide with that. And I think we to show that, yes, these people have been bad with us, but let's look at the progression that we can make together. Because there are so many pastors that are here, especially here in Chicago, that make strides in being inclusive and welcoming. And I don't think they get enough credit. Honestly, I don't think enough credit. And because me coming from my background of like being afraid to talk to priests, because I went to Catholic school as well. So talking to priests about things that I'm feeling, or like, I don't know why I like this boy. He just seems like he's a nice guy and I want to be around him more. And understanding like that leads to something because you feel a different way about a boy than you do a girl, or, you know. And I think it's important that we have those, like I said before, these conversations, this good dialogue, because I think a lot of people are so afraid to talk. They have these feelings, and then they just let it bubble up inside of them, and then that ends up like lurching out at the wrong time. And then it's like, I didn't mean that, or I didn't want it to come off that way, or that wasn't what I intended. And that's one thing I'm just very adamant about. Like, let's have those conversations so that we don't have those moments. So we don't have as much hate groups, as we don't have so many people that are like, oh, I don't understand you. Let's have a conversation so you can't understand me, you know?
Yeah, we have another question in the comments. Gabriel, they ask, how does your spirituality influence your drag?
I'll say for me, I'm gonna take this with Avery, so I'm done. So for me personally, it influences a lot of what I do in my general day-to-day life. But when it comes to my drag, it sometimes affects it, sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes I'll do like a spiritual number where I'm doing a gospel number. And sometimes I'm a hoe. So, but for me personally, though, I prefer to make sure that I'm using my chanting and my connection to the universe so that I can connect to other people, and they can just. For me, it's always about sharing love, sharing and being accepting and and knowing that we are in this together. So let's have a good time and let's communicate and connect with each other.
Mine doesn't really influence my drag. I do incorporate things. Like I said earlier, the culture and the religion are inseparable. So when I dress up in something culturally Pakistani, it can be perceived as Islamic as well. Like I do have a outfit that I wear that's an abaya, and it's worn by religious women, and I wear it in drag, and that's an expression of my spirituality and my religion through drag. Those things aren't supposed to connect in Islam, but it's nice to see that and like turn people's heads and be like, oh my God, what the hell? It's nice. They're not the reaction, just the get the gears turning in their head, you know?
Yeah. And I think also seeing that representation though, like honestly, I think it's great because most people don't get to see that. So then it's just like, oh, you're getting exposed to something that you don't know about. So I think that's amazing in itself.
Yeah. Indeed. So I think we're going to take a moment and just take a little break. And we'll be right back in a second. Folks, think of whatever questions that you might have while we're away, just like really briefly. Cool. All right. And we're back. Yay.
I should get a Riverdale. Bam.
Right? I know we should, right? Switch, change it.
There it is.
I thought about it. I have a wig right here that I was considering, like, I wonder if I could do that at some point. So maybe I will at the next break. Awesome. So what does yours, so activism was brought up a little bit earlier. Do you want to talk a little bit about how activism and your drag intersect, or your spirituality, however way that works for you?
I when I started doing drag, it really wasn't for, and it was all self-serving. Like I did it for the likes on Instagram, and it didn't turn into something more until I think like 3 years in. I realized there's no South Asian representation in the village in Toronto, and like the drag scene for South Asian queens had died out. And I was lucky enough to have made friends with this group of guys who runs a queer South Asian party, and now there's a whole bunch of us in the city, and it's amazing. And you know, like I see that as a form of activism. I think just being visibly queer, being visibly feminine as a brown guy is activism in itself. I know people get a lot of slack for, and just call it like, they don't see that as a political act, but I think it is. And I like, especially if your safety is being threatened, I don't see how that's not a political act, you know, just being visible. And since then, I've been advocating for queer South Asian people online, and it's become like my I don't know, my Instagram page has become like a safe haven for people, for queer South Asians, and it just makes me so happy that they're able to tell me things, and I'm able to share my experiences and be that person that I didn't have growing up.
Yeah.
Because I didn't meet another queer South Asian person until I was 17, and I got my first job. My assistant manager was queer and South Asian, and it took 17 years to see that. There was nothing on TV. All TV was filled with white gay guys, but nothing that I could relate to. The closest was like Jay Manuel on America's Next Top Model.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Beautiful, but he's not South Asian, you know. And so I had no one until I was 17, and thank God for that person too, because he was visibly queer, and that gave me permission to be myself too.
Yeah, I think for me, it's I started doing drag initially for charity. So I worked in retail for like years, and I did drag because a friend of mine was part of a drag king company. So I was like, okay, I can help out. I did drag it for theater shows. I could do it for a bar gig, sure. And then I got approached by the owner of the bar, and they were like, oh, we have a monthly show where we raise funds for different charities around Chicagoland area. And I was like, oh, so I can do my art and help others at the same time. Oh, I'm in. that was like, because I was like, I didn't have enough money to be like, oh, here's $100 to give to this, said charity, but I can put together a show because I'm a theater person. I can put together a show and we can help raise funds for different, local charities. And that was my form of activism, because at least starting off, I've done a lot more stuff, like really connecting more different organizations personally and doing more fundraising, things like that. But that was a good way to start, a way I can use my art form to help others. And I just saw how wonderful that can be. So I'm so grateful for having those beginning roots of like giving back, because I'm always like looking for an opportunity to give back to my community, whatever it can be. If I can help somebody, I will. Like take my dress, take my earrings, take my tips. It's fine. Go ahead, go for it.
Would either of you have, or what are your suggestions for young people like yourselves who might see themselves in you? What are some suggestions that you might have for them? Maybe they're wondering about drag and for themselves. What are some things for them you'd like to share?
Well, one thing I will share, I think there's always 3 tips I tell people whenever someone's like thinking about doing drag or want to try it. Just do it. Just do it. It's fun. You can have a good time. You get to be somebody different. So you get to let loose. Be humble. Because you may get someone that's like, that can paint your face, and you'd be like, oh, snatch, gorgeous, boom, boom, boom. And then you may feel a certain way and get a little ego. So, be humble. And the third thing is really revel in the moment of being someone different. Because a lot of times people will do it and they'll get so scared, and then they're like, oh, I'm supposed to be this way. No, just open up and just enjoy the moment, because this is a moment for you. And then when you share that moment, people are going to share moments with you.
That's great advice. I would say the same thing, don't try to be what everyone else is trying to be. I know when I started drag, I shaved my beard, and I tried to be all feminine and woman-like or conventionally female, and it didn't work. I felt horrible. I didn't look good. I was just trying to be a cookie cutter queen, and it didn't work for me. And it's not until I kept the beard and I was like, this looks cool. This is so cool. I'm like really messing with gender and like making people think. So like stay true to what feels good, I think.
Yeah.
Great.
And be safe, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really great suggestions. We do have a question from the comments, and maybe we can share with this individual. Angie asks, what about drag kings? And maybe we can, direct them to some drag kings. Or we did have a drag king that was going to be on the panel out of London this evening, and he hasn't been able to make it in this evening. So hope all is well with him. But there are amazing drag kings out there. Did you all want to respond to that question?
Yeah, I have some in Toronto that I really love our drag king scene is just emerging.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'll link them on my Instagram actually. It'll just be easier to make a list. But Alexander Brandy's an amazing drag king from Toronto. Baby Majora does a lot of drag burlesque stuff. They're non-binary. Yeah, definitely check them out, and they're great artists.
Yeah, and in previous interviews, I've interviewed a lot of other drag kings, so you can check out like a queer chaplain on YouTube, and you can check out King Lotus Boy, Tyson Check-In, McDouche, who is those are two out of the Bay Area, and then McDouche is out of Chicago, and they are yeah, they're fantastic. There's some really great drag king and non-binary folks, depending on where you're at in the. And then there is actually even a YouTube channel where they did a drag king festival. It was like a global thing where they just, I think it was almost like 2 days of like drag queen performers over and over and over. You can find that on. Yeah.
And I have one of my babies is Luca Me. That's one of my drag babies.
Oh.
So he's a drag alien king. So wild makeup and things like that, and also like very popular here in Chicago is Tenderoni, who just won the best drag performer contest with Alaska. So yeah, there's amazing drag kings that are in Chicago and also around the country. Because how I actually originally started, my friend was actually part of a drag king company. Like they were part of a drag king company, and they wanted a drag queen to be part of their thing. And a little history that people don't realize about Chicago. Chicago, before, RuPaul's Drag Race, there were a lot of drag king companies here in Chicago that actually were based here, and they would tour around the country. And it kind of died out when RuPaul's Drag Race came into fruition. But that's how a lot of people got started, because in Chicago, there was really only like 5 drag queens that had any kind of gigs in Chicagoland area. And it's wild to see like how the industry has changed. I've seen it grow from like only a few queens to the success of RuPaul's Drag Race to seeing so many people just express themselves more, whether they're queens or, they don't want it to be defined, we're just non-binary or have you, or androgyny, mixing it. I love seeing the differences that are happening and the creativity. I love it. That's what drives me more. Like, yes, I am 40 years young, but I am still kicking it with these kids. But I love it. That gives me like inspiration. Like, okay, cool. They're doing something different, something I've never seen before. This is great. I love it. Keep doing it. And I think it's important that we like support each other too, saying like, yes, keep doing it. If you want to be weird, be weird. If you want to be, the gorgeous glamazon, go for it. Like, just embrace who you want to be and do it.
Yeah, just do it. And there's like drag queens and kings and non-binary royalty. Like some folks will like, you don't have to be like, just because you're a cis woman doesn't mean you have to be a drag king. You can be a drag queen. You can be a non-binary, drag artist, or like those aren't real like rules or boundaries. Like you get to decide what do you want to try on? What do you want to explore? What do you want to play around with,
Right.
Yeah. And in San Francisco, there's a lot of folks too that are like non-binary in their everyday life. And then they have like a drag king and a drag queen persona, which is always interesting to see as well too.
I love that.
Yeah.
I need to make a hyper masculine persona. Maybe my high school self will make a return.
Right? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we are hitting right about the almost 1 hour at 55 minutes in. And so I wanted to check in with you all and see if there was anything that you wanted to bring up to talk about or ask of another person on the panel.
I just want to like, Coco, you have such a great energy. This is my first time meeting you, and it's just so, I don't know, there's something radiates out of you, and it's so beautiful to see and to hear. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. This rarely happens with people, but you know, when you just, I don't know.
When you feel it, you just feel it, you know?
Yeah, and you just feel like a good person to me. Like such a great light. I don't know. It's just so nice.
Thank you for that. Like I think this is just a beautiful moment that we can talk and share and, you know, share our experiences and share our love. And like, it's amazing to meet you. Like, I want to come to Toronto now. Like,
well, we're way behind on the COVID schedule. So once
I got my spray. I'll spray everybody.
After bring your own Lysol and you can come.
There it is. I want to ask both of you, like, what was the hardest thing that you've actually done, like, in drag? It could be performance or real life or what have you. What is the hardest thing that you ever had to do?
I had a difficult moment once during a performance. It wasn't the hardest thing I've done, but it was a really bad experience. My music shut off halfway during the performance, and it was at a straight event too. So it was a comedy show, and the audience was straight, majority straight. I could tell by the way they were looking at me. My music shut off, and it was a burlesque routine. So I'm standing there. A lot of my performances, I love going into the audience and interacting with people. And I went to the audience, music shut off, and I'm standing there like half naked. Like, oh my God, what do I do? Yeah, it was, now looking back, I can laugh. It's hilarious. But in the moment, I was like, oh my God, please put me out of my misery. Yeah, so I just like walked on the stage, and then they started the music again, but it started from the beginning of the song. And I'm like, nope, grabbed my stuff, walked off stage.
Not gonna do it.
Yeah, it was, oh God, just talking about it now makes me laugh because it was so funny.
And for me, I'm still kind of pretty new. I've done some stage performing. I first started doing drag as part of the sober scene. And so I would say my worst is just going to do a performance and then just like blanking. Like I just completely it was a song I'd known since I was like a little kid. And all of a sudden I didn't know the words. I couldn't move. There was only like 3 people in the audience. So it was just like, I was like, I don't know, just something hit me and I couldn't do anything. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Coco?
So I did this play. It was called Gaia Divine. And the play was basically about a drag queen represents the Mother Earth. And basically deciding on whether to continue the human race or just end it all. So it was a very heavy show. For an hour and a half, I did not leave the stage at all. So as soon as people literally walked into the building, I was on stage. I sang, I acted, and I actually had a choreographed dance number in it as well. It is the hardest thing to this day, I will say, that I've ever done. Because for the hour and a half, I had to be present the entire time. I could not just have a down moment. And the fact that, spoiler alert, I entered the world. So the fact of having just those feelings of being Mother Earth and deciding to end everything, every night killed me. Oh, every night. So I even get teary just think about it because it was such an amazing play and it was an original work and I got to work with some really amazing artists on that and it just it was, but seriously, after every show I was like, I need a drink. I'm tired. I'm drained. But it was cathartic. So it was so awesome in that moment, but also man, I'm tired. So yeah. It was one of the hardest things. It stretched all my muscles.
Wow. Sounds like it was probably a great performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think we can probably go ahead and end the conversation if you all are good with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Or yeah.
Yeah, this is
now at this point.
We can stay here all night. We can still stay on a little bit longer if you like.
I'm either way. You know, we can spill some tea if you want to.
What's in
We can also talk about any upcoming events that we're doing. So,
yeah. Do you want to go ahead and talk with us about that?
Coco.
Sure. So in this weekend, I'll be in Michigan. There's a gay campground called Camp It, where we're going to do a pride show there. And then in July 1st to the 6th, I'll be doing a tour in Denver. So I'll be in Denver, Colorado, just hitting up all the clubs there, touring and doing what I can do. And then every third Friday of the month, you can find me on twitch.com/Ben D Man. That's man with 2 N's. I host a burlesque show there online, so you can find me there. And that's one of the few things that you can find me doing around Chicago and online.
Awesome.
All of my gigs are online because Toronto's still closed pretty much. I do have a really big thing coming up that I'm not allowed to talk about, but it's a big thing. And it's starting next week, I think, and it lasts till December.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's a really big thing, and it's a big thing.
But if you tip her, maybe she can give you a hint.
Right.
It's right down there, scrolling.
That's like CNN. It's scrolling.
Yeah, it's like CNN.
Congratulations on that, whatever it is.
Yes, I'm excited.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it, and I'm hopeful that it turns out well. But yeah, it'll be on Instagram. So yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you both the guests that came on, as well as those who are in the audience who came up with questions and comments. To connect with us all more, just check out the links in the descriptions. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, whether you're, a new person considering drag, or you're questioning you have spiritual questions or whatever. Just feel free to reach out with us and out to us, and just know that people like us exist.
That's right.
All right. Well, you all take care, and you have a lovely evening.
You
Bye.
too. Thank you. Love you, media.